Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy Nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, and thanks so much for joining us today on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. It's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and today I'm joined by Kallai Plummer. Kallai, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. No, so tell us all about you and why you do what you do.
Sure. So I am a fractional COO and a business coach for women in business. Fractional COO means, Chief Operating Officer, and I do that at a part-time capacity for women in business, so that they don't have to get, people full-time. I am a contractor for those businesses. And so I do what I do because and I'm sure we will get into this, but I was a product of corporate culture and found that to be really toxic. And so I decided to pave my own way and pave my own lane and work with people that are impactful for me and want to scale their business and grow. So I do that with a loving heart and make sure that, everything and everyone that I touch and see is growing in such a way that is measured for impact. So that is, the most basic answer that I can give you, but that's truly why I do what I do.
That's awesome. And way to pave your own lane, right? And now you can pick the folks that you want to work with, that resonate with you, that appreciate you, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So let me dig into a little bit of what you said before too. So obviously this probably wasn't as a small child, your goal in life to do this career path, or maybe it was, but tell me how you evolved from, what you were doing in corporate America and then really defining this.
Sure. So I grew up, I wouldn't say I was, the riches, and I would say that I didn't know how poor we actually were. And so because of that, I was taught at a very young age that the way to get out of poverty, the way to excel in your life is to go to college, to get an education. You go into corporate, you work a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and that is your life. You work there for 30 years and you get a pension and you travel after you're done, and that is your life. That is what my grandparents did. They both had not corporate America jobs, but Monday through Friday, and all got a pension. They were on that same track. So it was just natural for my mom to kind of instill that into my brother and I. And I never thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur. Matter of fact, I changed my college degree 3 times and ended up on business management and then ended up in human resources. And I was in human resources for quite a while, the bulk of my career. And I just got really burnt out. For anybody that's in human resources, they just know that is a mentally taxing job. And especially when you work sort of in the staffing industry, that can burn someone out very fast. So after I got done with human resources, I'm just kind of like, what is next? And I thought commercial insurance was going to be fun. And so I went and got my commercial insurance license and soon found out that is where a lot of toxicity for me lived, and that did not match my personality at all. And so it was sort of kind of in the wake of the pandemic that I started kind of rolling around the idea of, do I get a different job? Do I pivot a career yet again? Do I go back to human resources, knowing that was super, super toxic for me as well? And I started to just kind of fiddle around on Upwork, sort of play around with the idea of being a contractor. I had a friend here in town that was like, I need some help. Do you mind helping me? And so it wasn't really until the beginning of 2021 that I was like, I'm going to make a run for it. I'm going to do this thing that we call entrepreneurship, and hopefully it turns out. And I did. I pivoted out of it, and I'm forever grateful that I took a chance on myself.
Oh, I love that. Like that. I feel like once the entrepreneurial bug bites you and you look back and you're like, what? This is amazing. It's granted, it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. And I feel like sometimes you work probably more in this environment than you would otherwise.
Yeah.
But it's amazing.
My mom, she was an entrepreneur as well, sort of later in life. She ran a daycare for 15 years. So, that comes with its own challenges of being a business owner. So I sort of saw that later in life, when I was probably, I would say middle school to high school is sort of when she started it. So I knew kind of what that looked like and all the work that goes into it. But as a kid, you only see so much, right? You have a different experience than your parent that is living it. So yeah, I would say that I wasn't built for the track only because that was how I was being parented, right? That this is the way out. So it was very interesting to just kind of circle back around and now be an entrepreneur when my mom was one as well.
So I know that nothing's a utopia and nothing's ever perfect every day by any means, right? But for you, looking at it now, kind of you've gotten your feet wet, you're in it, you've been in it for a while. Looking back, what are your thoughts?
If I could have done it sooner, I would have. There is power and there is freedom in the feeling of being an entrepreneur. They always talk about like, you get to work from anywhere and you can drive your own schedule and you can build your own team. And those are all really, really wonderful things that, yes, like those are really great places to be in your life. But the feeling of the sense of accomplishment that you have when you lay your head down at night and that day was amazing because you showed up for yourself and you did everything you possibly could. That's the feeling that I want to continue to chase and I want to continue to have a high in.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think so eloquently put, because I think if for entrepreneurs that are listening, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, yes, that's so true. Like that resonates with me so much as well. Being president of Platinum Wealth Management, yes, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. So one thing that we talk through on the podcast, obviously, is money and different money topics. But one thing specifically is money memories. So I know you've shared kind of your background with your family and evolving in your job path. But what's a money memory that you had as a younger person or as a child that potentially helped mold your relationship to money as an adult?
This is going to seem very negative, but I'll get to why this is a positive thing. My family still to this day does not have money conversations. We don't get into each other's business. My grandparents were always sort of tight-lipped about, how much money they had, where it was stashed, all of this stuff and things. And then on the other side, I had grandparents that were very open about talking about money and about investing and how powerful that is. And I never really understood that side of it because the bulk of my childhood was spent on my mom trying to make this entrepreneur journey work. She was our breadwinner. She was it. And so watching her sort of struggle, and she was a single mom for a lot of years. So she had no choice but to make her money work and stretch as far as it possibly could. And so I get teary-eyed about it because I sort of was on that same track as a single mom as well. And, you know, I wouldn't say I grew up on the system, but there were spaces in my life that we had to lean on the system because of my mom being a single mom and all of that. And so when I became a single mom, that was sort of my life too. So I had to make every dollar stretch. I had to, I put myself through college because obviously my family didn't have money for that. And so I worked 3 jobs. I went 21 credit hours a semester, and I had my daughter full time. So
Wow.
I knew nothing more than to, quite frankly, work my butt off just so I could survive. And, you know, there would be times where I'm like, we're opening up the oven because the light bill is turned off, you know? So it was never a good memory of money, you know, and the memory that I have of it now looking back is it was a means of survival and not a means of pleasure or not a means of feeling comfortable in your life. And so I will tell this story because I hope that if there is a single mom listening, that there is hope. And so the story goes that I was on welfare and I was getting my bachelor's degree, and I was about 4 weeks out from graduating. And I had a job lined up. I was ready to go. And I got a letter in the mail, as you often do, that your benefits are ending. And I was shook. I didn't know what to do. You know, Medicaid was ending, food stamps was ending, my rental assistance was ending. And I thought, I just need 4 more weeks. I just need 4 more weeks. That's it. So I called and I left her a message, and she called me back and she said, "Can you come to the office?" And I thought, oh crap, she is going to tell me, you know, that there is no hope. There's nothing that they can do, yada, yada, yada. And so I go down there and I said, I just need 4 weeks and I am graduating. I have, you know, at that time I had already walked the stage. So I was sort of finishing out the semester and I was getting ready to pivot into my job. And I said, I have, you know, X amount of dollars that are due. I have this much left on my food stamp card and it's just not going to go anywhere. And she said, do you know, out of 375 people that are on my caseload right now, you are the only one that has come and asked for an extension because you're getting off the system.
Wow.
And I said, no, I don't know that. And I said, but I can promise you, you will never see me again in this office. And I hope that I see you in the grocery store rather than here. And she said, I hope the same. And I never went back. And so again, it was the means of survival. And I, every day in my head was, how can I be 1% ahead? How can I put 1 more percent into my savings account just to make sure that if something were to happen, I never walk in that office again? And that was kind of my push to just kind of make sure that at every step in corporate, most of people's trajectory is they're upping the ante of their job description, right? Their direction is they want to be director, they want to be VP, they want to do all of these things because they want to climb the corporate ladder. And my way of doing that was so that I didn't have to live a life like my mom. I didn't have to give my daughter the life that my brother and I had. And so it just, for me, the memory is not great, but it's also an empowerment tool that I use when I'm feeling like, oh, my business isn't making, you know, X amount of dollars. It's like, well, on the other side of that, you could have absolutely nothing. So, yeah, that's my memory of money. It's
Wow.
interesting.
so powerful and so inspirational. I mean, thank you so much for being raw and vulnerable and sharing that too.
Absolutely.
And I always say too, think about like if one person hears that's impactful, that you're making a huge wave for, what a gift that you're giving by sharing your experience.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that. Gosh. So that kind of goes hand in hand to a certain extent with financial infidelities. So that, I feel like the word infidelity, and I told you this before, I'm like, it's a big, scary, hairy word. And people are like, infidelity. And it can mean different things to different people, whether you're not being impeccable with yourself with the budget, whether you had a partner that did you wrong financially somehow, or a business partner, whatever that looks like, or you witnessed something from a friend or a family member that you're like, oh gosh, what have you either been through in a journey with financial infidelities or witnessed that you think others could learn from?
I have a few.
Whatever you're open to sharing. You could share a few, you could share one, whatever you're comfortable with.
It all kind of falls into my journey, which is interesting. And I think the first bout of financial infidelity was, when you're 19 years old and they're selling credit cards in your mailbox. I don't know of one 18-year-old. My kid isn't even 18 and she gets them in the mail, right? Like they are hounds. And I had that track when I was 19 years old. I, racked up credit card debt, mostly because it was a means of survival. And I'm like, I'll just pay it later. I'll figure it out. So there was a little bit of infidelity on myself. And it took me a long time to really figure out what that actually meant and how I could change it, which praise God I did. I also was in a place that I have been married once before. And he unfortunately became an addiction to illegal substances. And so there was always this disconnect of not wanting to share bank accounts, not wanting me to kind of see the money that was flowing in and out. And I remember distinctly when I had put pressure to get the same bank account, there was reluctancy, but he did it. And then the questions started to come from me, right? Because I'm like, what the heck are you going to the ATM for all of the time?
Mm-hmm.
What is that for? And he would just, make excuses and, oh, I had to take out money for this and oh, da, 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 da. And I started to realize that he wasn't willing to have money conversations. And I really was starting to get myself, because this is also sort of the time when I'm pivoting into corporate and I, have gotten a cash flow that is, you got to start doing something with your money, really, more than just pay the bills. And so I started to really get on this track of budgeting and, getting financially sound. And at every step of the way, it was just met with a brick wall. I don't understand why you're being so nosy. I don't this, yada, yada, yada. And that became one of the reasons why, divorce ended, which is a lot of reasons why people get divorced is from financial strain, right? And not having these conversations. And so after I left that, I was kind of on the track of, I don't want to share a bank account with anyone. Like, I don't want to be on the hook of, being anywhere near someone else's money. And I would say that even now I'm married to a wonderful man who is just kind and gracious. And, that is still something, like, we still have separate bank accounts, but we're working through that. And it really is a journey of kind of positioning yourself to look at the reason why that's happening. And I realized that, and I'll just kind of backtrack, that when I was married to this individual who was having all of these issues, I was also paying for him to go to school and finish up his degree. And we ended up getting a bankruptcy. And so I have that on my record, and that is not something that I think highly of. But we had to, because it was all encompassing. It all came crashing down at one time. And that was really towards the end of the marriage where I really started to feel it. And I remember there was one day I was driving home from work and I had just gotten paid. And I saw it, you get the automatic notifications, and I saw it come through. And I thought, what would it look like if I just moved that money out of the bank account and get out of here? What would that look like? And it was really scary. And that was almost like the last money that I had in my bank account. But I knew I had to do it again, kind of coming back to this survival mode, And once I got out of that and I figured out that there is more than just paying your bills, there is more than just having a little bank account. There's investments, there's 401k, there's all of these things that you can do to set yourself up. And I wasn't doing myself justice by being with someone who was holding me back because he had an addiction issue that he just couldn't kick, and he was lying. So that's the bulk of the infidelity really that I've had to deal with. And it's still kind of is a little bit difficult now. I almost have like decision fatigue sometimes, because I am in a position, thankfully, that money is not something that is, I need to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. And so there's a little bit of the waiting for the other shoe to drop that still happens sometimes. And I think until you really do the inner work, to kind of get past that, it'll always sort of be there. But, that's still a very real and raw thing that I deal with every day.
Well, I mean, gosh, the journey that you've been through and for you to be able to, in essence, really change that narrative and for you to take your own power and your own financial power back is huge. And I know it's always a work in progress, and we're always a work in progress, right? But
right.
I commend you for being able to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as we wrap the conversation up, I always like to ask, what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
Yeah. So most of what my financial life looks like now is paying myself first and honoring myself first. And I don't say that to be cliche or to take that lightly. I think, as you listen to my journey, you can kind of see how that would make sense now, is to kind of show up and invest in myself first. And I think when you start to do that, you start to look at the bulk of your money that you have left differently. And so when I make purchases, it's just a little bit different. It's very intentional. And I have tried to move myself as much as I possibly can. And at sometimes it is a little bit cliche, and I have to talk to myself that way, where it's, do I really need this? Is this a need or is this a want, right? We hear that all the time. You got to pick your battles. But for me, because I've sort of had this past life of financial strain and all of the things, I've had to really talk to myself like that, because it's almost like I have to be my own cheerleader, because I don't have anything else to look at. And so if someone else, right, is coming from the background where maybe money is the same position that I had, being your own cheerleader and talking to yourself like a financial advisor, which can be a little bit difficult, but having hard conversations with yourself is really empowering, because then you get to really make your money work for you. And it's not in the sense of, oh, now you get to go and invest all of this money. It's you get to make your money work for you so that you have a peace of mind and you can get past these feelings of feeling like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, like I'm never going to have enough. And I think that's one of the other things that I really had to get past too is, when you start working in corporate and if you have a very lucrative corporate job, you can very easily get into chasing more and wanting more, and nothing is ever enough. And that can become just as toxic as not having enough and having to work to get that, right? So I think it's a balance of honoring yourself, honoring the values that you have, and really looking at things on paper and saying, am I being a good steward of my money? Because if I'm not, then I need some help. And help looks different for everyone, right? I when I first started on my financial journey, the budget mom, she does like a Dave Ramsey hybrid. She does, cash envelopes and all the things. And I needed to be really, really strict like that because I needed to understand how my money works and what I could do to position myself to get myself to actually have a savings. Because I didn't even know what the word savings looked like. And so that would be my number one tip, is to just really be honest with yourself.
That's huge. And I 100% agree with that. Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable, being here and sharing.
Absolutely.
So grateful.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. No, my pleasure. And hopefully those of you listening or watching will join us on the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.